What's up and welcome back to another live stream with Gizmo Slip Tech. Today we've got the Alienware M18. Look at this massive box. It is a monstrosity of a box. The Alienware M18 is the largest laptop for 2023 when calculated by volume, at least as provided by the manufacturer. So we're actually going to see how large this laptop is versus all of the competition out there. I've got a bunch of laptops in this room. We're going to stack it up against them, like on top of each other, so we can see what they like form factor wise. And then we're also, of course, going to be taking the bottom off, doing a bunch of benchmarks, testing the display, looking at the keyboard, looking at the ports, and playing a bunch of games today. That's the plan. The beast, if you will, from Dell. At least their top of the line should be their highest performance laptop, given that it has, I believe, 4 fans, vapor chamber cooling, 4 SSD slots, excellent port selection, 18-inch display, Windows Hello, Cherry MX mechanical keyboard, an i9 13900HX with 24 cores, 32 threads, and we do have the RTX 4080 in this guy, and it should go up to 175 watts. I'm very curious to see if it has any factory overclock from Dell or Alienware compared to the other RTX 4080s. I think there's a good chance it will, because the 4080 Alienware M16 kind of had a factory overclock. Now, the biggest question on my mind is, did Alienware fix their software or not? I have installed about 12 games, I believe. We're going to try to play them all today. Benchmark them with overlays so we can see temperature, CPU, GPU, all of that. The key, though, is I have not updated the Alienware Command Center at all. I wanted to have that experience be on live, on air with you guys, so we can see what did Alienware do for the Alienware Command Center software upgrade path. You know, is it easy now? Is it different? Is it intrusive? Is it effective? Is it lightweight, or is it just annoying, or is it better? You know, is it actually an improvement or not? Because the Alienware M16, when I tested that over a month ago, it was awful. It was terrible. It was very, very bad. And the implementation took forever to update. It was very intrusive. It took like 45 minutes just to figure it out and get it kind of working. And then the actual software power limits that applied to the CPU was way too low. And so I'm hoping this new Alienware Command Center on this guy will hopefully be a new one. It's not going to be the same old Alienware Command Center. And then I'm hoping it's actually going to effectively work and be user-friendly and all of that. So that is like the other big question on my mind, because based on my first initial experience with the Alienware M16, I just could not recommend the M16 to most people because of the software issues. So now, if the software is better, I'm going to be able to recommend these laptops a lot more easily and freely to a lot more people. But if that's the big question in my mind. So this is my laptop comparison sheet right here. And let's talk about the top competitors. And to do this, I'm actually just going to flip the list and go to the most expensive laptops, because this is like basically going to be competing against the literally most expensive laptops that money can buy. We've got the GT77 Titan. We've got the Blade 18, we've got the Mech 17, or the XMG Neo 17, same laptop, the GE 78, the Zephyrus Duo 16, the Scar 18. That's pretty much almost all of the top. Well, we got the Legion, I guess, but it's not really an 18-inch laptop. And I guess the Omen 17. All right, so let's just briefly do a quick rundown comparison of the primary differences between these two laptops. All right, so I'm just gonna point out some major differences, okay? So between the GT77 and the Alienware M18, we get an upgraded processor. You get a factory overclocked 4080 or 4090, so it does come factory overclocked. I believe the Alienware will also have some factory overclock applied to it, which this essentially kind of bypasses the 175 watt theoretical voltage limitations. So you basically can get overclock performance, and then you can even go further if you manually overclock it beyond. So then you can go up to 128 gigs of DDR5. So that's going to be 4 SODIMM slots on the GT77. This only is going to have 2 SODIMM slots on the Alienware M16 and all the rest of the laptops. So that's kind of another thing that makes the GT77 unique. And then, of course, you have the 4K 144 hertz 1000 nits mini LED display that has perfect contrast, is super bright. It's a big difference. Overall, they both have mechanical keyboards. They both have excellent port selections. They both allow for extra SSD slots. And they both have 4 fans for cooling. So there's a lot of similarities between the GT77 and the Alienware M18. The big advantage, I would say, to the Alienware is that it's a 16:10 aspect ratio. And it's a mechanical keyboard all throughout. The GT77 only has the mechanical keyboard on the main part of the keyboard. The number pad and top rows are not mechanical. And then I would say the other thing is the GT77 is a lot more expensive. You're going to spend way more money on the GT77. All right, moving on to our next one, the Blade 18. I am loving the Blade 18. This is the laptop I've chosen so far for this year. For myself, I've done benchmarking, unboxing videos of the Blade 18. You can find them on my live streams. Same for the GT77. So the Blade 18, I'd say the big thing about it is that it is a much more portable 18-inch laptop with a phenomenal webcam and good enough performance, allowing for undervolting and decent GPU levels and decent thermals with fans that aren't necessarily that loud. Very nice balance of fan noise and quality of overall experience. So the Blade 18 is really, I think, a good option, but it's a more expensive option as well. All right, if you want the best Blade 18, it's going to cost you $5,000. The one I got is only the $44.99 version, so $500 cheaper. It has lower, less amount of RAM, and I believe a different SSD setup. I think is the primary difference, but I don't think that this version would be probably worth paying for. Probably better to buy the lower end version than upgrade the RAM yourself later, I think. All right, moving on to the Eluktronics Mech 17 or XMG Neo 17. I did a live stream benchmarking this, and this had phenomenal performance, absolutely amazing performance with the liquid cooler. It was very impressive. The thing about it, though, is that it's definitely not as premium of laptop. It's just not as premium a laptop. The display quality is not as high. The keyboard on the membrane keyboard that I had was really bad. It wasn't a very good keyboard. The mechanical keyboard, though, should be better if you get the mechanical keyboard version of this. The other thing about the Neo 17, you kind of feel like it's an outdated design when you use it compared to some of these newer laptops that have smaller bezels, very efficient use of space on the inside, so the overall system is thinner while still providing the same amount of performance. And there just feels like there could be some more optimizations, especially to the internals of the XMG Neo 17. There's a lot of extra space in that guy. The GE Raider 78, this is another great option if you're looking for something that's a little bit more portable and still offers some great performance. I think this is actually a great competitor to the Razer Blade 18, and it's just, I don't think it's priced as competitively as it should be. That's probably the big downside to it. And the display is also not as good as some of the top-end laptops out there, but it's still a very nice machine, and I think a lot of people will be really happy with it. The Zephyrus Duo 16 features a dual-screen laptop display, and this guy actually lets you use a stylus on the secondary display here, which is going to be awesome if you need graphical design, or you want to do drawing, or you need to do spreadsheets, do dual displays. The performance on it was awesome with the Ryzen 9 7945HX. Excellent multi-core performance. The temperatures in gaming was very spicy when you are in manual mode and you have high power limits on that Ryzen, but overall the performance was really good, very close to the Intel i9 in gaming performance, and definitely better multi-core performance overall in typical multi-core workloads. But when it comes to actual most FPS, I saw the i9 getting higher FPS, though the 1% lows were better with the Ryzen chip. All right, moving on to the Scar 18 and 16. Scar 16 is also a valuable option. The Scar 18, I think, is another great option, though I would say the feel of the build quality is a little bit lower on this guy. There's also no Windows Hello, but the display is awesome. QHD Plus at 500 nits. 100% DCI-P color gamut. The other thing about the Scar series is there is a decent amount of coil whine on it. I did unboxings and benchmarks of this as well if you want to check out that video. Now the Legion Pro 7i and Legion Pro 7, these are also viable options, and they're also priced very competitively. They're 16-inch displays, though, so they're not really, that's just the largest one that Lenovo is offering. And they should have excellent performance overall with a decent keyboard. They did have some drawbacks to the Legion series this year, like the touchpad's now plastic instead of glass, which is weird. And there's no Windows Hello on it. And they removed USB-C ports and put USB-A ports instead, which some people will like, some people will hate. And there's no full-size SD card slot on it, but the ports is still pretty good, and the performance on it should be pretty good as well. Very competitive probably with this guy that we have today. The Omen 17 is just an ultra competitive for the money type of a buy. You've got a lot of features on this laptop, including an optomechanical keyboard that I really enjoyed using. It's, did we have Windows Hello on this guy? I don't think we had Windows Hello, but we have G-Sync and Advanced Optimus and allowed for undervolting. The performance on it was really good. And it was priced. It's the key thing is we could get the RTX 4090 for $2749 on the lower end spec configs. This is probably sold out right now, but it will become available in the future again, I'm sure, as parts and availability come into play. So I think this is a competitive option for people looking to save a little bit of money on the laptop and still get the top end performance, with a couple of trade-offs, right? Base price for the Alienware M18 is $2,099 currently, and that comes with an i7-13700HX processor. Now keep in mind, HX processors currently are required if you want to do any undervolting for increasing the performance. The HX processor has 16 cores, whereas the i9 the 13700HX has 16 cores, and the i9-13900HX has 24 cores and a slightly bigger L3 cache as well, which could help with 1% lows potentially. But anyway, we've got RTX 4060 on the cheap price. If you go to a 4080, it's $2649. You go to a 4090, it starts at $3249. Now the configuration we're testing today has a 4080. I'm not sure if it has 32 gigs of RAM or not, and I believe we have a 2 terabyte SSD in here. And we did do the QHD Plus 165 hertz display, and we did do the Cherry MX mechanical keyboard. So this M18 that we're testing today costs around $3,100 for a 4080 config. So it's not the cheapest 4080 config, that's for sure. But an 18-inch 16:9 aspect ratio display is going to cost a bit of extra. And then, of course, you have the premium features on the Alienware series, like the Windows Hello and the fancy RGB lighting, and then the build quality, of course. So you're really paying for those extra features in this price value. Now, if you want to go to a 4090, it's a $600 upgrade. Okay, so that could be worth it for some people or not worth it for others. I think a $500 upgrade would probably definitely be worth it, but at $600, it's kind of more of a question mark whether a 4090 upgrade would be worth it if you have the budget to swing extra high. All right, so first up, you can see we've got a giant white box. We've got 1/8 with kind of a outline of the laptop in a rectangle. I like this box overall. It's not a super durable box. And this is the external box the laptop was shipped in. It was not shipped in a secondary box. This is the external box. There's not that much protection for this laptop, in my opinion. And I would probably recommend that they add another layer, especially for international shipments. All right, so you open it up. We've got some cushion here, which is good. And then we got the laptop right here. Got our power brick right here. Let's go ahead and get this laptop up and out. You can see how monstrous this guy is. It's a very big laptop. This should be the biggest laptop of the year, though I have not put this side by side with the GT77 Titan yet. I will soon. All right, we've also, let's go ahead and take the plastic off here. And also, let's grab the power adapter. So we got our power adapter cable. And we've got our giant brick. This is the big one, just like the Alienware M16. So it's the same size. All right, so here is the laptop. We open that sucker up for you. So here is the power cable. It is about 6 feet long. This cable is also about 6 feet long. So you're gonna be able to plug this sucker in from like 12 feet away from the wall outlet, which is, I think, the longest power cable so far this year in 2023. Almost all the laptops have one of the cables being shorter than the other one. All right, so we get Alienware head stickers. Kind of cool if you want to put that on something else, I guess. You can pause that and read that if you would like to read it. And then we have our warranty information. Taking a look at our warranty information real quick. but I'm not going to read it, all right? So should be a good shot of that. All right, so here is a little quick guide setup. All right, so lets you know about the ports, and then has the same thing in reverse on the other side. And this lets you know you need to plug the laptop in before you turn it on. This is the Asus power brick. Here's the Razer power brick. You can see that if you go with the Blade 18 or 16, this power brick is going to be much smaller. And you go with something like Asus, this power brick is a medium size. And then you go with Alienware, you're getting an extra big power brick that's even less portable. I would say the Razer power brick definitely wins this year overall. Here is the GT77. All right, so you can see that they are almost exactly the same length, but the M18 actually extends beyond. It's got a bit of an extra width to it, being an 18-inch display. All right, so and then if I show this to you sideways, you can see that the GT77 Titan maybe is a little thicker right here at this little butt end. I would say the GT77 is actually thinner than the M18, except for this area. This area is a bit thicker on the GT. Other than that, the GT is probably a little thinner. Here's the Alienware M16. You can see how much smaller the M16 is. It is going to be noticeably more compact. And then, of course, you've got the kind of ultimate blend of performance and portability in something like the Blade 16. Look at, the Blade 16 is probably almost half the size of this Alienware. It is such a big difference. Last up, we have the Strix G18, which is also the same size as the Scar. So you can see that even though they both have 18-inch displays, the Strix G18 is quite a bit more portable. It's thinner, the bezels are not quite as wide, or the laptop's not quite as wide, and it's also not as deep. Next up, we're taking the bottom of this guy off. Looks like we'll just need a Phillips head screwdriver. And I don't even think you'll necessarily need this kit today for this guy. You could use probably a pretty regular Phillips head, as long as it's a small screwdriver, small head screwdriver, to get this open. And just so you know, this is Phillips head number 1. That's the screwdriver size in the iFixit kit that I'm using. All right, and looks like that is a pop-up screw there on the left corner. And this one is also a pop-up screw. So if you don't know a pop-up screw, it basically, a pop-up screw is where it lifts the chassis bottom up and off the laptop so that the laptop bottom, and creates a nice gap into the AM. They make awesome t-shirts. I love them, highly recommend them. Link in the description for 10% off anything you order from their website. And it does help support me as a content creator at the same time. Wow, so this was super easy. Just the 2 pop-up screws alone made this whole chassis separate. If you do use the Into the AM links, it does help support me as a content creator. I don't know if I mentioned that. I want to make sure I say that. We've got a lip right here that goes underneath the back portion. So once we get all the sides up, we just pull it forward and it comes right up and off. Whoa, whoa, interesting layout. This is not what I was expecting for the layout. I was expecting the 4th fan to not be over here. I was expecting the 4th fan to be over here. So we have 2 big fans, 1 medium fan, and then 1 small fan. We have a 97 watt-hour battery, so not quite the maximum watt-hour battery. I thought for a second there you were limited to only 2230 size SSDs because it says 2230 there, but I see that you could put in a second one that goes, you can go either 2230 or 2280 on the SSD size here. So this has 4 SSD slots, 2 2280s, 2 2230s. Now the tricky part about the 2230s is it's hard to find them larger than 1 terabyte. Sometimes I think you can get 2 terabytes, but 2 terabytes is the highest capacity for the 2230s. The 2280s can go up to 8 terabytes. So the theoretical max capacity of this laptop would be 20 gigs of SSD storage. And I'm pretty sure this would fit dual-sided SSD sizes, no problem, given the spacing that's inside of here. Now, we have our speakers set up here on the left and right side. So we got our speaker on the left and right, and I think there may be additional speakers on this unit on the other side as well, but they face upward firing, I believe, if we do have them. Anyway, this is our RAM. I'm kind of amazed at how much RAM in so many different laptops is the exact same this year. All right, so We've got SK Hynix 16 gig 1RX8 PCI 5 4800. If you want to pause it and read the RAM, there you go. Our SSD. It's an SK Hynix PCIe Gen 4 X4 1 terabyte. Let's take a closer look at our thermal solution, which we can't really see because it's inverted. We got an inverted thermal solution vapor chamber on the other side, okay? Look at all these heat fins. There's a crazy amount of heat fins all across here, all across here, all across the back. And then we got more heat fins here and here. This is some of the most heat fins we've seen in a laptop. Notice how much of the side is for fan exhaust, which is kind of crazy. And then we got our CPU and GPU right here in the middle. And of course, since they're inverted, we can't really see exactly how they're set up. Now, it's supposed to be liquid metal, which is basically their element 31. We don't know exactly the composition of their liquid metal that they use, but they imply that it's heavily gallium. So it should be competitive in theory with what Asus is doing with their Conductonaut Extreme. We'll actually have to test it. What really matters is the actual temperatures you get when you actually play games and everything. So basically, the flip motherboard means that it's going to be a lot harder if you want to repaste your CPU and GPU in the future. Maybe your CPU and GPU, after a couple of years, you're like, oh, I want to go ahead and repaste it because we're seeing higher temps now than we used to see. It's going to be a lot more difficult to repaste it with the inverted motherboard. That's kind of the downside. That said, in theory, if you get a good CPU, GPU paste with liquid metal, it should last a long time with a proper application. Asus claims that their liquid metal application should last 10 years before degrading significantly. This is an impressive layout of an internal laptop because it is utilizing the space pretty dang well. There is some extra area here around the battery that, you know, I kind of wish that they didn't even include these 2230s. I would rather them try to space everything so that they could do 3 2280s, because 2230s are they're not worthless, but they're almost worthless in terms, like they're not almost worthless, but I would rather buy 2 2280s that are 8 gigs and get 16 gigs of space, and then not even worry about the 2230s, because it's almost, for only 1 or 2 terabytes of space, it's just not worth the hassle to put them in, and then you have them on separate drives, and it's hard to keep track of where your files are when there are so many different drives on your system. In general, I would recommend just getting upgrading your 2280 drives and forget about these 2230s, and not even value the 2230 drives that highly. So you really gotta, like, you know, get it kind of wedged in the back. So I'm not getting it to go under. There we go. Got it to go under. Got it to go under. There we go. You got to make sure all of the little pieces, even on the far sides, these sides over here were catching. All right, so the 2 pop-up screws are now down. And you got to put the pop-up screws down before you can snap the rest of the chassis together. I felt some things pop together in the middle of the chassis as well. That's good. So we got some structural support in the middle. All right, so starting in the right corner here, absolutely no flex, incredibly firm, incredibly firm, incredibly firm all the way through there. Just a little bit of flex over here, not much, like extremely little. No flex, no flex. A little bit of flex in the deck, though I don't think the bottom of the chassis is flexing. A little bit of flex, a little bit of flex. No flex, no flex, no flex. Going through the middle, a bit of flex. That's gonna not really be very noticeable, I don't think. Going through the center keyboard, a bit of flex, a decent amount of flex. Overall, very minimal flex. The only area where the chassis is a little flexy is right here in the keyboard. This keyboard is a Cherry MX mechanical keyboard. I'm gonna let you get a good, nice listen to this. It sounds excellent. It's not incredibly loud, but still gives you a nice chunky keyboard feel. And it is very consistent. Now, it is interesting that the spacebar is not backlit. That's a bit different. Most laptops do have the spacebar be backlit. Now, going ahead, I'm gonna zoom in on the actual, we get a lot of function keys. We have a fan turbo key button up here at the top. Right, so we can adjust the fan profile that we're in with that F1 key with FN plus that key. Not sure what this does. What does this do? I don't know, it doesn't seem to do anything. Not doing anything, not doing anything. Oh, you know what? I think these secondary functions are the primary function, because I can change the keyboard backlight with F7 without using the FN key. All right. So there's 2 levels of brightness, and then it turns off. And so I would think that this C with a thing would open like the Alienware Command Center or something, but it's not doing anything. We got our Bluetooth button. This gives us our Bluetooth settings. It's popping up on the screen right now. All right, so when I press the Bluetooth button, that came up. And then we have our display brightness and dimming, T-pad, home and end buttons, and then our delete key all in a row here right above the space bar or the backspace, which is an interesting choice. This is gonna be very useful to people that wanna use home and end, but it's a little bit different placement than some laptops. And then if we go to the furthest right, we can see the number pad. You can see it's a full-size number pad with nice spacing and ordinary normal placement. So if you have like a bunch of finger memory from all the typing you've done on other number pads, this will translate really well. And we do have volume mute. We do have volume mute, volume down, and volume up, as well as a microphone mute button along the top on the right. And notice that the Alienware logo over here is RGB. It is changing colors. Now, this is a per key RGB keyboard, and we can adjust all of these colors to look individually different. But the thing is, we got to use Alienware Command Center, and this is the defaults. So we're looking at the default first, and we're about to try to get into the Alienware Command Center. Are you ready? There's the display. It is a QHD 165 hertz, 16 by 10. So that means 2560 by 1600 resolution. And it's got minimal-ish bezels, but there's a bit of a bezel along the bottom and a nice upper, like, it's kind of a big bezel if you count the hinge here. And the hinge is very firm. All right, the hinge is very firm and strong feeling. I don't think you're gonna have any problems with this hinge for a really long time. I think this is a very sturdy hinge design. I like it. That said, the bezels on the sides are very minimal and the top is fairly minimal. Let's take a look at our camera. There is our webcam. All right, so I'm evaluating the colors and details. Fairly detailed, definitely a bit noisy around the hair and the face. The colors are not terrible. I would say this is a slightly above average webcam for a gaming laptop, but it is still far from great. Let me go ahead and take a couple pictures. I'm typing on the keyboard now. How does the webcam look and sound? Let's find out. I'm typing on the keyboard now. How does the webcam look and sound? Let's find out. All right, so you could definitely type and use the webcam, but the typing is gonna come through in terms of sound. Here are the images that I actually took for pictures, and it's not amazing on the webcam. It's not terrible. It's an in-between webcam. Let's take a look. We're going to continue our keyboard backlight settings. So Alienware Command Center. This will be the first time opening this myself. It did open on its own once so far when I was just making sure the games were running and an afterburner was working. All right, so, but I did not look through this. So this is all new to me and you at the same time. First preview of the Alienware Command Center. All right. Welcome, gamer. Manage your system performance. Alien FX game library with Alienware Command Center. All right, so we're going to start. Performance made easy. Quickly change between preset system modes and create your own custom system settings in Performance. Create your vibe. Customize the lighting, keybinds, settings, and more on your supported devices using Alien FX. Your titles, your rules, save performance mode, and customize Alien FX settings for each of your installed games. All systems are go. Alienware Command Center will automatically match your game title settings on your new adaptive dashboard and new performance overlay. To me, this is all incredibly over complex, and I can already tell it's overly complex. There's no reason to try to match your game performance modes with specific games. I really dislike that because it just complicates the gaming experience for no reason, I think, and will sometimes mess up your performance in games when it assigns the wrong profile to you or whatever. I think it's so much better if you just cycle between the modes as you need them and the user controls it. Like a good balance mode that'll work in 99% of games, and then maybe like a performance mode that'll give you just a bit more performance, and then a quiet mode. Those are really the 3 modes you need. And the user can usually select the mode they want a lot better than an automatic system that is oftentimes broken. That said, we got to go ahead and sign our soul away, or it's just, oh, that's data collection. Let's say no thanks. So that's what it looks like when it's normal size. And this is new. This is different than the Alienware Command Center previous. version. Can I make it bigger, and does it look different if I make it bigger? It does look a little different, but essentially it's still the same. It scales well when you change the size of the window. Let's go ahead and let's keep it small so it's a little easier to keep the camera on it. One thing I want to point out is that when we loaded this system, it didn't take like 2 minutes to open like the old Alienware Command Center. It opened for us easily. All right, I loved that. That's a nice improvement already. Right here, you can change between battery, quiet, balanced, and performance. Oh, and there's also overdrive. So balanced, performance, overdrive, and custom. It's a bit annoying you can't see all of them at once. Why can't we? This is what? I dislike that. That should be, you know, this should be easily to change. And there's like, is there a need for 7 different modes? Battery, quiet, balanced, performance, overdrive, and custom. So there's 6 different modes. Let's go to custom. Overclocking, warning. Okay, here's where we would configure our custom mode, it looks like. Underneath this second tab on the left, you also have overdrive. Okay, overdrive apparently must overclock the system out of the box. So that's how we'll try testing it today in overdrive mode. There's a thermal button here at the bottom. Let's try clicking that. That turns on max fans, all right? I'm pretty sure that is a max fan button to reduce our temps. And you can hear the fans kicking on, going 100. Oh yeah, look, you can see the fan speed. You can see the fan speed for each of these. So you got your CPU fan, GPU fan, and GPU fan. So you got your 4 fans that you can adjust individually. That's kind of cool. That said, one of those fans is not very powerful. One's just a little tiny fan. So going down to the Alienware FX Center here, let's see if we can change our lighting to a wave system and see if all of the lighting we can you know, colorify or like, you know, change what our lights look like. All right, so either you got in the top left over here, you've got this lets you change the Alienware logo on the back, and then the Tron light. I definitely want to see what kind of lights we get for the Tron light. So if I click 3 or 4, so if I go 3 and I say morph, so that'll control the top half of the Tron light, and 4 if I do morph, or I guess let me do spectrum. I'll try spectrum on both, and let's see if it changes the light on the back. Let's go ahead and save the preset. Let's make this also spectrum, and let's also make our Alienware head. Oh, for this we can have it change to different modes. We can have fully charged be blue. Charging right now is a multicolor, and sleep flashes a blue color. And it looks like interesting. Okay, so you can make it a different color if you're plugged in or if you're on battery. So with battery, we can make it green. With plugged in, we made it blue. That's kind of cool. Though it looks like I cannot change these individually. Fully charged, charging, and sleep, they're gonna be the same no matter what. Interesting. So I can change it. Whatever secondary color I put in, it changes the charging thing to morph between the plugged in and on battery mode. So you get like, you can pick your 2 colors basically. One means full power, one means charging, one means battery mode. So I'll do red to indicate battery and blue to indicate that we're plugged in, and it'll morph between red and blue when we're charging. That's kind of cool that is set up like that. Let me go ahead and save that. We're still blue to orange, indicating that we're charging. We should be dark blue to red right here instead now. I'm gonna try changing. So in the settings here, I'm just gonna try typing in system default 2, and now I'll try hitting save preset. It's still, nothing is changing. So let's check the rear. Did our rear lights change? Hey, the rear lights are working. We're now getting a spectrum cycling across the Tron lights instead of just blue constantly. But the charging thing did not change for us. So still a bit buggy there. That's what the Tron light looks like. Let me try a couple of different camera angles for you. I gotta say, this light does not look quite as cool as, I'm gonna try doing morph instead of spectrum and see how that looks differently. All right, so that is the morph setting. Looks like it flashes and then it's not changing colors or anything, but that's basically the morph setting. Let's try pulse. There's pulse for you. That is not what it's supposed to be doing. It is completely dark. So again, another bug we have found. All right, let's go back to Spectrum. All right, so here is Spectrum. And now I want to point out that I changed the speed on one of the Tron lights to be slow and one of the Tron lights to be fast. We should get a little bit more variety of color here on the Tron light. But I gotta say, this Tron light does not look as cool as the old Alienware X17 Tron light that had like a multicolor ring going around the back. It's still a cool Tron light though. All right, so we've definitely encountered some bugs already inside of the Alienware Command Center. Let's see if we can get the keyboard to look differently. Up in the top left here, we're going to select keyboard. We're gonna go to lighting. I think we gotta highlight. Can we highlight? Do we click and drag over these keys or? Oh, we click all keys. In the bottom left here, we click all keys. And then we can do Rainbow Wave, and we'll hit Save Preset, and let's take a look at our results. Hey, we got Rainbow Wave going now. Looking way snazzier. We can also do high speed, or we can do low speed. Oh, so that's duration. So low actually means fast, and high means going slow. So I'm going to go through the different keyboard modes right now. Let's zoom out just a little bit so you can see the different keyboard modes. This is going to be breathing. You can select the color you want it to breathe with. So you can pick different colors. And then you've got scanner. This allows you to change colors or allows you to like shift back and forth in like a individual wave. Static, blue, or you can just pick a random color. So there's really not that many presets compared to the competition out there, but these still look good. You know, Rainbow Wave, as long as I got Rainbow Wave, I'll be happy because that looks good. All right, that looks pretty good to me. That makes the keyboard way cooler. I wish the charge light here would change. It's not updating. That's the only real terrible bug so far. Look at this. So F1 right now is staying white. It's not changing color with all of the rest of the keys right now. I just reselected all keys. It's not letting me change anymore. I can't click on a lighting effect. Let me try going back in here. We'll click all keys. It's blanked. It's blanked out right now. This isn't. I'm gonna try not to mess it up now. Now that I'm trying to leave the area, it's coming up. There's unsaved changes detected. Do you want to save? I'll click yes. All right. So this is library mode. Library titles here, and then you also have Dolby Atmos. We're excited to introduce a new experience with Dolby Atmos. Okay, it just opened Dolby Access, a separate app. So why is this even a thing inside of Alienware Command Center if all it's going to do is open another app? That's pretty weird. Anyway, so we can go into the settings here on just like we can on other laptops, and by default it's set to music and balanced. And I think we're just going to set it to dynamic because that almost always sounds the best with any Dolby Atmos product. But when we do our music test, we'll play around with this and see how the speakers sound with different settings. To recap what we found out about this system, Alienware Command Center, we now have, this is the home page. You can select the Alienware laptop here. It'll pop up Alienware FX. You can change your colors and lighting in here. And everything was working except for our charging light. Let's see if keyboard is now working properly. It is not. We are still not able to change anything now. So why? So we now have no keyboard backlight except on the R key. Okay, now we got a blue keyboard backlight. I'm gonna try closing Alienware Command Center. Let's reopen it and see if we can get. Oh, when we opened Command Center, it popped back to Rainbow Wave. That's interesting. All right, we're gonna click Don't Show This again. All right, so let's see if we can get keyboard backlight control to happen for us. Now that we've restarted the application, we still have no keyboard control on the backlight, not letting us change anything on the backlight. All right, it's like, I don't know, maybe a reset. Let's try a system reset. This is the last attempt at getting Alienware Command Center to work. Otherwise, I'm just gonna say it's still buggy, but at least Alienware Command Center, we're getting functionality, I think, over the performance modes without it being horrifically buggy. There you can see some of the backlight bleed. We've got some backlight bleed in the top right corner, top left corner, and then some in the left over here. That said, you're not directly facing straight on, so let me Yeah, so really backlight bleed. We got some in the top left and then bottom right. Okay, Windows Hello worked when the room is super dark still. That's nice. It's saying, unable to launch application due to background service components not being ready. Please try again after a few minutes. If the machine was just started, it may take some time for the components to be ready. Okay, so let's try opening again. Okay, so we still cannot open Alienware Command Center. This does not look good for Alienware. Like, this is, like, you don't want to have to wait to control your laptop when you turn it on. Alienware is just using, like, a service that takes forever to open in order to actually control your lights. Because that was a good, what, 2 minutes that we had to wait to get our keyboard backlights to look correct. Can we control the lighting again? It is still grayed out. We can change the lights to different colors, but we can't change the lighting effect. Alienware, at least the Alienware FX system lighting still has some ways to go. I'm sorry, it does. We still need some improvements, all right? Okay, so there's another thing in here you need to be aware of if you were to buy this laptop. Inside of the settings here, you can see that there is an Alienware Command Center overlay. This is a way for you to see what fan profile you're in and other things. I'm going to show this to you, and then I'm going to probably turn it off. So there's this thing called Alienware Update, which is an way you can update your system. Let's see what we get if we try this. Okay, so it says the system is up to date. So I'm guessing we have the latest Alienware Command Center. The most important thing, though, to me is what is the performance like? Can we control the performance consistently? Those are more important than just about anything else. I would really like to be able to not have this rotation, okay, between different modes here. That's very dumb design because there's no reason you couldn't be able to select any of the 6 out of the box. All right, so... And looking here, we've got backlight bleed up here. We've got some here. And this is a reflection, mostly. There's a little bit of backlight bleed in the bottom right corner and a little bit in the left. I wouldn't say this panel's grossly bad for backlight bleed, but there is definitely some backlight bleed. We got 100% of sRGB, as expected, 94% of Adobe RGB, and 90% of the P3 color gamut. Again, this is according to the Spyder 5 Elite, which underestimates the color gamuts by a little bit. So probably like about 8 to 9% underestimation. So you're looking really at 100% Adobe RGB and probably like 98% of the P3 color gamut, which is still very good. Our brightness, did I forget to raise the brightness on the last setting? I must have, because it says it's only 188 nits brightness, which we know it's not that. So we can look at the brightness on the lowest settings. It was 15 nits with a high contrast ratio. Our contrast is not really that great. Only 700 on these tests. Let's go ahead and redo this brightness and contrast. Interesting. There's our brightness test. 300 nits is what Alienware claims, and we got 290.7 with 740 to 1 contrast ratio. So that is below a little bit below what Alienware claims, but most importantly, that is significantly lower than what you're going to get on most of the competition laptops that you're competing with in this price category, especially this contrast ratio also only being 740 to 1. I would say you really want over 1,000 to 1 in an ideal brightness and contrast perspective. This really leads me to recommending the 480 hertz display instead of this QHD 165 hertz, particularly if you're an esports gamer. Anyway, so that's a little bit disappointing to me. Only 290, vibrant and colorful. But it's not as contrasty as I would ideally like, and it's not as bright as I would like either, especially on a $3,000+ laptop, right? Like yeah. I mean, if you use this indoors, you can see the display is very colorful. And if you use it indoors, this machine's going to be very nice to game with and play, do everything with, but it's not going to be ideal. All right. It's not going to be the best laptop display that money can buy for sure. So next up, we need to test the speakers, and then we can move into our benchmarks. We're going to start off with dynamic, and we'll try testing a few different audio modes right here at the beginning, and then we'll restart, and whatever sounds the best, we'll use that, okay? So Let's go ahead and make our speakers 100%. All right, so we're gonna start out with Peter Spacey Roar. Okay, so all right, so I would say the music balanced mode is probably the loudest sounding, I think. That's interesting. I was expecting it to be dynamic, but dynamic sounded quieter to me. So we're gonna try the music balanced mode. All right, for our audio test. Let's go ahead and zoom out again, and this will be the start of the test. Here we go. So 3, Peter Spacey Roar. Okay, next up is Faded Aeon by Half-Life. Okay, and next up is La La La. Do swing.
I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la.
Okay, so very impressive in the last song only. Basically the mids with the vocals, la la la, that sounded pretty decent. The first two were bleh. Like the bass was not very good. The clarity we were breaking up the mid, like the highs were breaking up and the lows really weren't very strong. Yeah, I said very impressive, but just the very end there was good. Like I would say the vocals in La 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 were pretty decent. The volume overall is pretty loud. But in terms of rating this audio system, I'd probably give it like a 7.5 out of 10. Significantly, like that's basically just like an average laptop speaker, which is kind of sad because this is the biggest laptop chassis that we have this year in 2023. And I would really hope that they'd be able to put higher quality speakers in such a big laptop. Okay. So we're ready to move on to our performance testing, and part of that performance testing is going to be undervolting. So we're going to start off with Cinebench R23, and we're going to do a stock test, and then we're going to see if we can undervolt it. All right, so we're going to use the overdrive mode. All right, and we are going to turn on maximum fans. All right, so max fans are engaged. Let's go ahead and do a single run. Okay, so out of the box, we got 29,351. All right, so our second run got 27,816. Okay, we're definitely being power limit throttled. Now we're doing 81 watts, 130 watts, 138 watts, 130 watts, And we got 26,987 for our third run. Our temps are spiking to 101 degrees on the CPU package with only 133 watts of power. That is not ideal, I gotta say. It's not pulling that high a wattage and we're already thermal throttling on the CPU. When you compare this with the other laptops this year, like the Blade 18 does 130 watts to the CPU. It's like stays below 90 degrees Celsius mostly, I believe. At least with an Undervolt it does. And I think it eventually goes down to like the 80s after the fans all catch up and everything. So that's pretty mediocre performance. I mean, it's obviously really good performance compared to previous gen technology, but it's mediocre compared to the laptops that this is competing against. So, especially considering all of the fans in this guy, you would think we would be getting better temperatures and better CPU package power output. So this is 28,400 is not very good. All right, that's not very good, sadly. This does not have Intel XTU installed by default. That there's Intel XTU Manager running in the background. So if I jump down to XTU service, so right here you can see XTU service. So this is what the Alienware Command Center is using to control the processor power limits and everything. So we're going to install the official version of Intel XTU to try to undervolt this and also potentially raise the power limits. But the thing is, we can't really raise the power limits because we're already thermal throttling. So undervolting really right now, we're just hoping to improve our power efficiency of the system at the same throttle limits. All right, so that's the two displays side by side. Let's switch between some different background images. So the Blade 18 display is a 500 and something nits display. I'm not sure if you can see the difference between these. The thing is, the color gamut is very similar. I would say the gray levels, this is brighter, it's more vibrant, and it has better contrast ratio. This is basically 570 nits, this is 290 nits, but the color gamuts are the same between the two of them. Colorful wise, it's hard to tell a difference. It's more about the brightness, especially as you go to brighter environments. The display is very bright and is very vibrant, and when you see it side by side with another display that's higher quality, you will tell a difference, but it's not going to be as dramatic as what some people will think. It's not like this display is so awful, how could you ever use it for anything? Like, it's not that bad. All right, it's very colorful and very vibrant looking. Core voltage offset is not available to us. We can change our power boost limits though. Interesting. It says it's only 65 and 81, which we know it's not that low. You know, when we open up Command Center and when we actually did our tests, it was better than that. We might want to go into the BIOS. Interesting. Right now, we're in the performance mode called Max Performance Max Fan Speed. They changed it somehow when we reboot it. We cannot offset, we cannot do a negative voltage offset. So no undervolting is going to be allowed. Let's go ahead and see if Cinebench R23 will run for us. So our initial power draw is doing 141 watts. We're being CPU throttled already with temperatures instantly. Just getting started, we're already hitting 99 degrees Celsius. This, to me, this seems like we have a bad CPU paste job. That's what this to me indicates, because it's thermal throttling within a few seconds of starting out, which it shouldn't do that. If it's conducting the heat off of the CPU properly, then it should at least take 30, 40 seconds to reach, you know, full heat saturation under typical loads. That's very interesting. Probably a CPU repaste job would really help this guy out, all right? Also, looking at our temps, we only have one P-core peaking at 100 degrees Celsius. The rest of these cores are in the 80s. But we just have the one CPU core that is outside of that range, and it is spicy temps. So that to me means that there's probably a portion of the CPU that's just has like no CPU paste, or like, you know, like one corner of it, or like, you know, something like that is just not conducting heat away. So we're running this 10-minute CPU test, 8 minutes in, or we have 8 minutes left. I'm tempted to just let this thing keep running. It says 137 watts. I'm gonna go ahead and just reset these numbers because I think it was not reading fully when we were at the beginning. I don't know. All right, so we're gonna do the 8 minute average for our CPU clock speeds, and we're taking a look at our P cores right now. We are doing 3.79, it's basically 3.79, so basically 3.8 gigahertz on all of our P cores. Our E cores are doing 3.15 and 3.2 on the E cores. That's not very good in general, especially for this power limit. It kind of sucks. Most of these laptops pulling these kind of wattages are able to go over 4 gigahertz, or at least be right at 4.0 on the performance cores, and then more like 3.3 to 3.5 on the E cores. And like, even if you have an undervolt, I've even seen 4.2 gigahertz on all of the P cores. This is significantly below the ideal performance of this CPU for sure. And I think it's because of this bad CPU paste job with a 1 core that's shooting up in temperatures. It's probably preventing all the rest of the cores from performing up to the snuff, right? Up to like their potential. So looking at our CPU package power, we are now averaging 129 watts across the entire CPU package, which it's a good amount of wattage. All right, that's the same as, very similar to what we saw the Blade 18 doing. The GT77 does 135. The Scar 18 does 140. So it's in the same ballpark as the competitors. And yet I think this CPU paste job is probably really hurting the potential performance and the fact that this thing's not undervolted. So looking over our temps and wattages, again, we're averaging 129 watts so far for 5 minutes. Overall, this is great performance compared to previous gen, mediocre performance compared to the competition. So we're gonna let this finish up, and then we're gonna hop into the BIOS and see what we can get with see if the BIOS offers us any type of undervolting opportunities or any additional overclocking opportunities. We'll have to see. The right wrist rest is completely cool. Touchpad is cool. Left wrist rest is completely cool. WASD keys have a slight, barely warm feel. Middle here has a little bit of warmth, but basically completely cool. Cool, warm, hot, hottish, very, very warmish, cool. Yeah, so overall, that's not terrible. Like, this is in general, very cool. Along the bottom, it's still not that hot. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the feel of the system is very cool. So we must have dropped to an even lower wattage. Look at this. All right, so now we're only doing, it was down to 78 watts, and now we're doing 146 watts. Okay, now we're doing 121. So it throttled for a little bit and then came back. All right, and then we instantly shot up on this P Core 3, back to 100 degrees again. But most of the CPU is just fine. Super interesting. I would say you would want to repaste the CPU and check out the performance after the fact. Okay, so our 10-minute score is not terrible, but also not great. For a non-undervolted CPU, it's pretty decent at 28,328. Let's go ahead and go into the BIOS and see if there's any undervolting options inside of the BIOS. I believe it's going to be F2 or maybe the delete key or maybe F12. I'm just going to tap all of those at once. Cool, that got us into the BIOS. One of those keys is the right one. All right, so we're in BIOS version 1.5.2. I want to make a note that Alienware did update the BIOS just using Windows Update. This BIOS was updated on March 16th, so it's a very recent BIOS. We've got our boot configuration. You can activate and deactivate different boot devices. You've got integrated. You can disable the camera, interestingly enough. All right, so those are all the options that you got in the integrated devices section. Under storage, you can enable, disable RAID 0. You can enable or disable the different PCIe slots as well. For our display, you can set the brightness when running on battery power to do something automatically. You can enable hybrid graphics, advanced Optimus when available. But you can obviously if you leave that checked, you can obviously change that when you're inside of Windows. You don't have to be in the BIOS to do that. You've got your Wi-Fi settings here. Under power, we've got battery configuration. So you can set a custom battery charge level to be 50%, 90%. Express charge using fast charging technology. You can set different charging schedules. So if there's like weekdays you're working, you can change to a different battery level. That's pretty cool. I like that. That's sweet. I don't think most users will actually take advantage of that. They'll probably just set it and forget it. Okay, under security, there's some security options here. I'm just going to scroll through this so you can see. If you need to pause this and look at anything, feel free. I'm going to go to the next one. Passwords. You can set an admin password, system password. All right, update and recovery. I noticed that Windows automatically did a recovery OS thing in case you need to do recovery. System management, you get to choose what it does. You can have an auto on time. There's a lot of different options you could do. So if you know you're coming into work every day at a certain time, you can have it turn on right before you get to work. You can enable, disable the number pad. And right here, you can do FN lock. So right now it's set to lock mode, which means that the F1 through 12 is the secondary option. So you have to press FN in order to use the F1 through 12. Pre-boot behavior, adapter warnings, extend BIOS boost time. So if you need to try to get in and out of the BIOS a lot, you can enable that. Virtualization support, you can enable or disable virtualization. We can try turning that off. Maybe that'll allow us to have Undervolt capabilities, but I don't think that's going to affect anything. We'll apply those changes. All right, and then here's a performance section. Let's see if there's any options here. This allows you to change the settings of number of Atom cores available in the OS. So you can disable your E cores or enable them. So you could turn them completely off by setting it to 0. Enable adaptive C states, turbo boost technology. We're just gonna leave all of this on. Enable dynamic machine tuning. Overclocking feature. This disables global overclocking function. When this is enabled, overclocking options are displayed. So why can I not change this? Because right now it's grayed out. If I uncheck dynamic machine tuning, does that give me options? Change overclocking option 1 or 2 in Alienware Command Center in order to adjust that. So let's try doing that and then pop back over into this. So let's go ahead and apply our changes, exit and reboot. This is the best we got, guys. All right. So this is the best performance you can get out of your system. What we're going to be testing in max performance mode. We're going to disable everything, exit any extra applications, and then let's go ahead and get game testing. I think the way to overclock this system is just to do a factory reset, shut it down, pack it back into the box, send it back to Alienware, and then buy something else. We're going to Ray Tracing Ultra. We're going to test on quality settings, frame generation enabled. So this FPS is so far noticeably worse. So our GPU wattage right now is 153. Our core clock on the GPU is very good at 2490. Our GPU temperatures are excellent at 66. Our performance, though, is noticeably less than the competition so far. And pop over to comparable benchmarks now, all right? So the SCAR 18 got 116, the GT77 got 112, and we got 104.8. So that is significantly behind the performance on both the Blade 18 and the GT77 and the SCAR 18. The Blade 18 in the same test, 119. So the Blade 18 had higher performance than any of these and 15 higher FPS than this guy, all right? I'm tempted to run it back one more time because that's such a bad result. We've not seen an RTX 4090. Oh, this is a 4080. Okay, we gotta compare apples to apples. So 104, you need to compare this not against the 4090s. We need to compare this against the 4080s, duh. Okay, so we gotta compare this against the Strix G18 and Alienware M16, and both of these scored 102 and 101. So this actually scored 3 higher FPS than the other 4080 laptops that we've tested in this test. That makes me feel so much better, okay? That's good then. Congratulations, Alienware. You gotta win. QHD Plus, 165 hertz. Everything's on ultra preset, quality settings on DLSS. Let's continue. Okay, so here's our... We're definitely getting some stuttering there. Well, at least one big stutter. I'll try resetting it one more time. Taking a look at what we're doing for our CPU and GPU right now. 90 degrees on the CPU, 85 watts to the CPU. That's a good amount of wattage. Good job. 70 degrees on the GPU. That's very good. Our GPU wattage is only 140, and we're not being fully utilized on the GPU either. Only 90% GPU utilization. Our GPU clock is oddly showing us incorrect GPU clock. We're walking. Here's our dead space test. And we're going to check out what the Strix G18 got and Alienware M16 got after this test. So we have something to compare with. Britt says, thank you, I'm going to get the GT77. Interesting. The GT77 is, I think, a good choice unless you're an esports player. Those brightness and contrast ratios seem pretty low compared to the competition. Yeah, it definitely is pretty low. Wow, our FPS is actually really good. A very CPU-bound game, obviously. So 111 with 39 FPS for our 1% lows. Strix G18 doing 97, 98. Then where M16 did 113. This did 112. So almost basically the exact same performance with the M16 and M18. And the Strix G18 is just behind. All right, so we need to go to high quality ray tracing. We want DLSS on quality. Frame generation enabled. Let's go ahead and hop into some games. I would agree that this is a disappointing showing overall. At least for CPU performance, undervolting potential, and the Alienware Command Center. This hasn't been as bad as what the Alienware M16 review was like, but it's still not much better. You know, like, that said, in these actual games, like, we're getting some good performance, I think. In the games themselves, the performance has been good. So I'm going to try to reserve judgment until I've had a chance to, like, see everything about the laptop. You know, we got to not kind of, like, judge the laptop, you know, before all the eggs are hatched or whatever you want to call it. That's kind of my thought right now, is that we just got to be patient and see. All right, so... Okay, so we're almost at the very end. We got to look at our average here right as we end. 122, 123, 123. So 123 FPS average. Here's our numbers for RTX 4090. Dying Light 2 got 128. The GT77 138 on the Scar 18. And we've got 144 on the Blade 18, I believe. This 124 score is not too far off from the GT77. But I feel like the GT77 almost needs to be retested at this point because of all the latest updates and drivers and everything. So overall, this M18 did a pretty good job doing 124 FPS for an RTX 4080. That's not bad at all. The smoke system now in Counter-Strike, you're going to be able to throw it, and then you can like throw a grenade, and the grenade will clear away the smoke so that you can see through the smoke. So that's going to add all kinds of new gameplay mechanics. And when someone shoots through the smoke, the bullets are going to clear away the smoke as well. So you're going to be able to see someone shooting at you. Like, so if you actively shoot through the smoke, you're basically going to create holes in the smoke to see through, but you're also going to be able to get shot very easily through the holes that you create. So it'll be kind of like a catch-22. I don't know. It looks really cool, and I think it's going to cause Counter-Strike to become more popular. If you do go the HID evolution route, just know it doesn't support me as a content creator, but you do you. That's totally fine. The tricky part about HID evolution is they're probably going to charge you more than if you were to just buy it from like Newegg or like Amazon or something. 393. 393.7. That is noticeably behind the RTX 4090 and the i9 13980HX. If we pop over to our graph here, you can see the GT77 got 548 and the Scar 18 got 513. So if you end up getting the full HD version of this laptop, you can probably get higher FPS, obviously because it's going to be lower resolution. So you could probably still get the 480 FPS though in Counter-Strike. So it's not a complete loss. Also, we're on high settings. DLSS on quality. Display, we're on ultra settings. Let's go ahead and continue. Here we go. So 98 FPS, 98 average, 46 for our low. Popping over to our tests on the 4090 series laptops, we got 116, 124 with God of War on the Strix G18 and Alienware M16. You can see our test results being actually a little bit better on the Strix and the Alienware M18. So 104 and 101 on those other laptops. So we're a little bit behind on this Alienware M18, which is very interesting. I wonder why. Our 4090 laptops, the GT77 did 124 in this test. So this time we're 25, 26% behind the other laptops. That's obviously going to be a pretty noticeable difference going from a 4080 to 4090. Let's chop into Hogwarts Legacy now. Okay, so far our 1% lows are actually looking really good. Our average FPS is not like amazing, but it's obviously good performance. So every time I do this test, I always at least run around trying to load all the textures in. All right. I have not tested the Zephyrus M16 4090, no. Okay, so here we are. Let's go ahead and do our test. Notice our CPU is pulling 58 watts of power. Our GPU is pulling 127 watts of power, which shows us that we're being severely CPU bound, which makes sense. We typically are in Hogwarts here. Well, bam. So we ended up with 90 FPS with 40 for our 1% low. That's a good 1% low. The Scar 18, we got 93, 78 on the GT77. This is with older versions of Hogwarts though. So I'm going to show you the Blade 18 score, which should have been right after the updated version of Hogwarts came out. In the Blade 18, we got 111. So that's 21 FPS higher than what we got here in the Alienware M18 with a 4080. So that's a 4080 versus 4090 difference. For a 4080, I feel like our performance is pretty decent. In actual gaming, it was good. So far, it's been good. All right, so let's pop over to the forest as well, like we usually do. Just run around in the forest for a moment. Performance has been very good. All right, so I'm gonna redo the average here. Let's try messing with our different performance modes and seeing how loud our speakers are. All right, so we're gonna open up the command center. I'm gonna show you. We're gonna switch between quiet, balanced, performance, and max, and we'll just see what kind of CPU, GPU temps and quiet. What kind of fan noise we get with these. So I just switched to quiet mode. It didn't actually change until I came over here. Click quiet mode. Now I'm waiting to see if it does anything different. Nothing is changing. Is the Alienware command center busted? Are we able to change our fan mode? We're in balanced mode now. Let's turn off thermal. I'm not seeing any difference here, guys. We're still pulling 148 watts, 150 watts to the GPU. Quiet system. Come on, quiet down. Performance mode. Come on. Max mode. Thermal mode. It's all the same with no differences in terms of performance. Let's fight this wolf. Okay, we killed the wolf and we leveled up. Wow. Definitely disappointing the Alienware Command Center is not it's not working. Okay, so we want to go to max thermal mode. Notice that it's loaded this performance preset. I don't want any performance presets to ever be applied to any game, especially when I'm doing tests. So it's super annoying that this happens. And now it won't even take my max performance preset and apply it. It's just showing us balanced mode right now. Performance is set to high performance mode. I tried expanding Alienware Command Center. We now have a bunch of white screen. I'm gonna stop this benchmark until I can get this thing in the correct setting mode. I mean, high performance mode should be good, right? High performance mode used to be the max fan mode. I'm pressing Control F1 again. Like, this is not responsive. The command center is not doing anything. No clicky. Clicky, no worky. Goodness. If I press Control Shift O, does that pop up the overlay? Okay, it is set to high performance mode. We're gonna try to test it in high performance mode because why not? I can't click on Alienware. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so the menu, nothing was working inside of Red Dead either right now. Maybe we'll get a Red Dead 2 test done. Let's find out. All right, we're ready to go. Okay, so I have reset the reset our FPS numbers here. Let's see what happens. All right, so quick examination. We're at 94% GPU utilization, 97% GPU utilization. That's good. We're being CPU bottlenecked a little bit. Our CPU is hitting high degrees. We just hit 100 degrees on the CPU there. 110 FPS right now. We are still being CPU bottlenecked, even though we're not in an area with a bunch of NPCs. That's not good. We'll probably be more severely CPU bottlenecked as we get to other areas. Emmett Smith says, Dell says Command Center is fixed every year and it's always the same. Sad smiley face. Yeah. Thank you. So the Razer is the way to go then? Well, I have really enjoyed my Blade 18. I have had minimal problems with the software. I can undervolt my Blade 18. The speakers sound amazing. The webcam is really great. The one thing that drives me crazy on the Blade 18 right now is the arrow keys. I am constantly pressing the wrong arrow key as I try to type and move around. Using the arrow keys, like using my cursor, the typing cursor, say in Microsoft Word. Say I want to go down a line or up a line or go back and forward with different words. It's awful. That's the worst part of the Blade 18 experience for me. Everything else is really good. The Blade 18 is just, it's been a great experience. The ports have been great. The gaming on it is phenomenal. The display is super responsive and bright and vibrant and looks good, and the speakers sound really good, and it doesn't make that loud of fan noise. The fan noise is very reasonable. So that's like the keyboard is really the biggest con to the Blade 18. There's no number pad and there's no full-size arrow keys. So, but there's other parts of the Blade 18 keyboard that are really good, like the function keys along the top are excellent. And the backlight is the brightest backlight that you can get. So there are pros and cons to the keyboard. And overall, I do really like the Blade 18. So they're trying to make the keyboard look like the MacBook or something. Yeah, but then the MacBook still has better arrows because at least the sideways arrows are thin. So it's easy to tell which arrow key your finger is on without looking down at the arrows. And with these ones, I'm constantly accidentally pressing the wrong one because it's hard to tell sometimes if you're on the up arrow, the down arrow, or on the left-right arrows. Yeah, I don't know. Wild Turkey says, I use an external keyboard anyway, so on my laptop, the onboard keyboard is mute. Yeah, that's true. You could use an external keyboard, or if you dock it a lot, it's no problem. Guala says, Dell is aware that their command center is not good. They like that on purpose because it's a business choice. Fixing the command center requires a lot of money. It doesn't require that much money. It requires probably hiring 2 to 3 competent developers. I was in software development for a long time, and you just got to hire better developers. Fire the developers that you got, get new ones, and then let them work on it for a couple months, and it'll be fixed. Like this is a command center is not that complex of a software application to write. Like I was a software consultant for like 10 years. I worked with software developers for a long time. And I mean, it's not necessarily easy, but it's also, they overly complicate things by trying to add in extra useless features. Just keep it simple. At least all of the performance nodes need to switch at the right time when you're using them. They need to do what they're supposed to do consistently all the time and always. Like that's got to be the core functionality. If it can't do that, you've failed. All right. So 97 FPS for our average FPS. So the Blade 18, you can see we're doing a lot more FPS. 115 FPS on the Blade 18 versus 97. There's a big difference between a 4080 and a 4090. So we're doing highest settings, ultra ray tracing, exclusive DLSS on quality. Let's hop into the test. We're in QHD plus, ray tracing on ultra, DLSS on quality. Let's see what we get in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This is going to be interesting. All right. Emmett Smith, how does the M18 feel to the touch now that you've had it going for a while? All right, I can check. I mean, we kind of had a big break there, but the wrist rests on the right and left side are excellent. The middle of the keyboard is a bit warm, and along the top of the laptop is pretty warm, up by the Alienware logo, close to the screen. But most of the rest of the laptop is pretty cool. All right, so GT77 Blade or Blade 18, in terms of screen quality, do you notice any big difference during your review? So the contrast on the GT77 is better and the brightness is noticeably better on the GT77. But the responsiveness of the display and the smoothness of a 240 hertz display is quite noticeable in my opinion compared to the 144 hertz display of the GT77. So I personally would much prefer the smoothness of the QHD 240 hertz, and I like to be able to play native games at 240 hertz QHD plus versus trying to go to 4K because it's much harder to render 4K images. That said, you can still easily push 4K gameplay up to that 4K monitor with the RTX 4090, especially if you use DLSS on quality or balanced mode. It's still certainly possible to game on that resolution, but you're always going to be getting better FPS in QHD plus pretty much. It's going to be easier to push those frames out. So really for me, if you're an esports gamer or a Twitch gamer at all, I would definitely recommend going with a QHD plus display instead of a 4K display, even though it's a 144 hertz. Zabalds with the $4 super chat. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. So Jazz Pro X, M18 better than the Scar 18? No, I would say the Scar 18 is certainly a better buy than the Alienware M18, at least so far. There are some advantages for the Alienware M18, but like the speakers on the Scar 18 are better. The temperatures and performance has been significantly better, I think, on the Scar 18, especially now that you can undervolt it. The ports, however, are much better on the Alienware. The upgradability factor is better on the Alienware with the additional SSD slots. And Windows Hello on the Alienware is also nice. And I think the build quality is also better on the Alienware. So there are pros and cons between the two. But in general, I would recommend the Scar over the Alienware M18 so far. Okay, so results. Average FPS 137. All right, that's pretty dang good for a 4080. Let's hop over to some comparison results. We have the Blade 18, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So Blade 18 got 161. So that's a 24 FPS difference, though some other 4090 laptops we saw did 169. So it is possible to go up to 169 with a 4090, which is a pretty big difference in performance. Display needs to have frame generation enabled, 2560 by 1600. All of that's beautiful. Witcher 3, let's see what we get. Oh my goodness. That was some crazy stutters. We are going to roll it back because those stutters were like a half second. What is up with our settings? What the heck? Everything's black. Graphics, let's turn everything off. Let's go back. There we go. Let's go to graphics. Let's turn everything back on to ray tracing. Let's go back. Frame generation is on. What the heck? The game is bugged. I guess we're gonna restart the game. Okay, so here we are. We're doing our run. Took a moment for those gates to open up. That was a little weird. Doesn't usually happen. Okay. And so we got 99 FPS, 54 for our 1% lows. The 1% lows are excellent. Let's compare this with the Blade 18. All right, so here's The Witcher 3 on the Strix G18 and Alienware M16. We got, looks like 93 FPS on the Strix G18, 98 FPS on the M16. So yeah, the performance so far, very close to the M16, basically identical, though our 1% lows are quite a bit higher with this Alienware M18 now. I've already disabled the overlay in the settings and it's still coming up. All right, so if I go to the settings, let me show you. Overlay. I had this unchecked. Okay, so I have unchecked the overlay now. I swear it was unchecked before. All right, I swear I unchecked it once earlier in the stream. And at some point, maybe I rechecked it at some point. So it switched us to balanced mode. We gotta go back to max mode. Pain. This is pain. We're gonna go through this pain. We're gonna survive. We're gonna thrive. All right, we're gonna embrace the pain. That's how we grow. All right. All right, so we're gonna go to firing range. Not me, especially as a benchmarker and reviewer. They're just a pain in the butt. And for sure, regardless of whether or not you like them, they should not be on by default. You know, like you should be able to you should have to manually turn them on rather than them being the default settings that everyone just has to have. And have to mess with it constantly, even after disabling the overlay. Apex Legends. Let's go ahead and see how responsive this 165 hertz display is. I have reset the FPS meter once we got into this area. I feel like our 1% lows are not that high, actually. I'm getting a little bit of stuttery feeling. I'm gonna try resetting the FPS. Yeah, our 1% lows, I'm feeling the 1% lows, like making this experience not as smooth right now. All right, so let's go ahead and try jump into low now. This is much, well, no, it had some stutters. It was better, and then it got worse. I don't know why we're getting so many little stutters, little micro stutters. Look at that, we're down to 30. Look at our CPU wattage, it's only 45. 50, and our GPU wattage is only 140, and our 1% low is 36. What the heck is up with our 1% low in this game right now? I don't think we were in max fan mode because I was able to press the F1 key to make the fans go faster. I don't know what the heck's going on with our performance. I'm gonna try again now that I've pressed F1 to try to activate the fans. I don't know what's going on with... I can kind of aim all right, but it's not as smooth as the other laptops where they have like 1% lows that are a lot higher. Like our 1% low should be at least 150 right now. Apex Legends. All right, so here's Apex Legends. All right, so our 1% lows on the Apex Legends on the GT77 Titan and the Scar 18 were both 171 and 199 for our 1% lows. That is so much better than what we're seeing on this laptop right now. I don't know what's causing the 1% lows to be so bad, but they're very bad. Damn. All right, we got a kill. It's just the 1% lows are very, very bad, and it's not as smooth as a 240 hertz display would be. But 165 is pretty good in terms of esports capabilities. I mean, it feels fun to play on this laptop still. I just wish our 1% lows were better. The 1% lows are definitely not great. I'm having a lot of fun playing though. That's the important part, right? You want to be having fun when you play, and I'm definitely having fun. Okay, so let's go and exit that. Let's go and hop into our 3D mark now. Oh, so when you press the F1 key, it switches to this high performance mode. You don't have access to any of your settings. Then you go to the max settings. That's interesting. High performance mode obviously should be like max performance, max fan mode. It's interesting that our fans are not actually kicking on. All right, so Timespy downloaded and installed very fast. 135 FPS. All right, so our wattage pull, 163, 169. I'd love to see 175 for our wattage pull. Right now, we're not doing it, though. Our CPU wattage is not that high. We are, 173, so we're getting close to the 175 max. 174, basically, right there. That's a good sign. Sometimes I have to press the shift key to get our overlay. Hey, there's 175. Whoa, there's 179. Oh, snap. Don't let NVIDIA see this. They're going to shut you down. Pushing past 175 wattage there. Sweet. All right, 19,052. 16,942. That's a good CPU score and a very good GPU score for a RTX 4080. That's good. So let's go ahead and hop into Afterburner, and we are going to apply a overclock. Let's try for a 200, 500 OC. GPU clock overclock is pretty strong, so it might be too much. It's probably close to the limit of what the GPU can even do. 176 wattage to the GPU. So again, very high wattage rating. I'm not seeing any artifacting. I'm thinking we're probably pretty stable. Alienware M18 with an RTX 4080 doing 19,726. That is a really good score for an RTX 4080. That's the highest score I've seen for a 4080. That's phenomenal. That's a phenomenal Timespy score for the Alienware M18. This guy has a phenomenal keyboard and trackpad. All right, so the keyboard has a great layout, a great feel, has nice depth to it. A nice mechanical Cherry MX keyboard here is phenomenal. It's one of the top keyboards of this year for sure. The layout is good. The functionality is good. The backlighting is excellent. It's bright. It's vibrant. The spacebar is not lit up. The secondary functions, though, are lit up. The software did work for controlling it, but the software options were pretty dang limited inside the Alienware Command Center on it. It was a little disappointing, and it was a bit buggy when we were doing it because sometimes we couldn't apply the backlight controls. It was weird, and yeah, still disappointing. The trackpad is a glass trackpad. It feels good. It's large enough, and it's comfortable to use. I had no problems with the trackpad. That was good. It's got a good click and a good size. We've got our 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, two USB-A 3.2s, a headset port here. Our speaker output is right here. And then we have our large fan exhaust right here. All right, moving along the rear of the device, we have our power port, full-size SD card reader, mini DisplayPort 1.4, HDMI 2.1, USB 3.2, and then two Thunderbolt 4 here. That is phenomenal. I love the ports on this machine. The ports are really, really good. And then on the right side, we have a huge fan exhaust. The problem with this fan exhaust is it does blow on your mouse hand. That's a downside, but you can just, yeah, it's gonna get a little bit warm on your mouse hand. That's the downside. All right, so that's a reality. You got another speaker out over here, two downward firing speakers. As far as I know, there's nothing on the top as far as speakers go, but maybe not, I don't know. USB-C 3.2 on the right side. As well. So you get three USB-Cs, two of them are Thunderbolt 4 supported. So the ports on this machine are next level. Like they are arguably the best ports you can buy on a laptop. The keyboard is phenomenal. The keyboard is really, really great. There's no denying the quality of the keyboard. The touchpad, the layout, the feel of this is very high-end and premium. The chassis is very firm and stiff. You got a metal top lid. I like this metal top lid. It's very nice. You've got a metal bottom. This bottom panel is also very premium and nice feeling. You got this ring going around the outside here. This is to increase airflow. All right. But it just ends up making the laptop stand up a bit higher. I don't know. It's a pro and a con. And this thing's going to get caught sometimes when you're putting it into your backpack and other things. But in general, it's fine. It works well to support the laptop and helps the chassis feel very rigid and firm. The webcam, Windows Hello, works good. The webcam is decent quality. I did do a webcam. Speaking of the display, let's talk in detail about the display. We got 290 nits on the peak brightness, which is very low end. It's the lowest end display on a high-end device as far as brightness goes and contrast. Like the Omen 17, it has a lower color gamut display, but it's a brighter display. It goes up to 375 nits. And you can get a QHD 240 hertz option on the Omen 17, and you don't even have that option on this, which is kind of sad. And the contrast ratio was also better on the Omen. The contrast ratio is basically better on almost all of the other devices than this one. Okay, so brightness and contrast are both crappy on this, below average, which makes it harder to recommend this. That said, if you're in a dimly lit environment, it's still gonna put out a nice image. Like, it's gonna look good. Your games are gonna look good. It's not like it's gonna be a terrible gaming experience. It's gonna be very colorful, but it's just gonna be not quite as nice as the brighter, more contrasty displays out there, especially mini LED displays. All right, like you get the Scar 16, the Zephyrus Duo 16 display next to this thing. It really doesn't look good compared to those, or the GT77's mini LED 4K 144 hertz display. All of those have crazy contrast and very bright and vibrant displays. All right, so let's talk about the portability factor. We did stack this laptop up against all of the other laptops out there. And this thing was the biggest laptop out of all the laptops. Bigger than the GT77, bigger than the Strix G18, way bigger than the 16-inch laptops. So it's really tough to be like, yes, this is a true desktop replacement. And with that true desktop replacement, you do get the improved ports and you do get more upgradability on the inside. You get the 4 M.2 slots, but 2 of them are only 2230 SSDs, which are going to be lower total size and not going to have as many upgrade paths. And I just really wish they would instead put 3 2280s or something other than that. I think like 3 2280s are more valuable than only 2 2280s and 2 2230s. I don't know. Or just put something else in there. I don't know what kind of upgrade. Maybe 4 SODIMM slots would have been more interesting than the 2230 slots, or add better cooling maybe instead of the 2230s, you know, improve the vapor chamber or heat pipe coverage, or add better speakers. There's a lot of things they could have done on the inside. Instead of having those 2230 slots, they could have done as alternatives, right? Let's move on to the next topic. Joe Hayes with the $5 super chat. Thanks so much. Let's talk about performance. Cinebench R23, we got 28,000, like 600 in a 10-minute test. That's decent. But the problem was we were hitting 100 degrees Celsius nonstop almost instantly as soon as we started Cinebench R23. And we ended up doing 129 watts over the 10-minute period, which is a pretty decent amount of wattage, matching what the Blade 18 does. But we couldn't undervolt this, so the performance doesn't match the Blade 18. The Blade 18 on a 10-minute test gets like 31,000. So this is like 10% slower than the Blade 18, and it's going to be significantly slower than a Ryzen chip, which can do like 34,000 stock or 36,000, 35,000 with an undervolt, with a curve optimizer undervolt. And then, so there's better performance machines, at least in terms of CPU focused multi-core rendering performance. Windows Hello worked well. The webcam was decent quality. In terms of gameplay performance, that's where this laptop did shine. It put out great frame rates for an RTX 4080 in every game we tested. The problem was our 1% lows in Apex Legends was a bit weird and wonky. I'm trying to think of any other. We did see some high CPU temps once again on at least one of the cores. We think one of the cores is heating up much more than the other cores. So that did cause our CPU temps to skyrocket, potentially thermal throttling some of our performance more than what it should have. Our RAM speed in this is DDR5 4800, 32 gigs total. So we didn't have any issues with our RAM performance in Hogwarts. We had very smooth gameplay in Hogwarts, and we had excellent overall gameplay. So, I mean, if you're focusing on the gameplay testing I did today, it was good performance and decent performance for the money. That said, something like the Omen 17, you can get a 4090 for cheaper than this 4080 version. So if you're after the best bang for the buck, go check out my Omen 17 videos. Those are probably still the best bang for the buck, under $3,000 or close to $3,000. That said, the Legion Pro 7i is also going to be very good bang for the buck. A little more expensive than the Omen 17, but also a little better and worse in some ways. Let's talk software for a moment. We got to talk about the Alienware Command Center. It was an awful experience dealing with the Command Center. It was interrupting us constantly. It kept becoming non-responsive. We couldn't change the keyboard backlight, and then we couldn't open the Alienware Command Center every time we rebooted. It took like 3 minutes to be able to even open the Alienware Command Center. So imagine you're going into a library, you turn this sucker on, or you go into a class, your teacher is talking, you open your laptop on and it goes, you know, the jet engine comes on and you can't even change it for 3 minutes. Like, you're just sitting there embarrassed in front of all of your friends, in front of all of your classmates. It is awful. It's happened to me before, okay? It's happened to me. With my old Alienware, you don't want to be in that situation, okay? So Alienware really needs to work on the software on this so badly still. It's a buggy mess. They should never have software profiles being applied automatically without permission or consent first. You need to enable that feature. It's enabled by default. That kept interrupting the fan profiles I was trying to set as a user. And then I couldn't even change them properly. They wouldn't apply. It ended up crashing the system. I had to reboot a couple times. You know, of course, that interrupts the gaming experience. Then, you know, you have Dolby Atmos inside of the Alienware Command Center, and yet you can't even change anything inside of the Command Center. Like, it's just like a shortcut to open up the Dolby Atmos software. And it's like, why is this even in here? I guess it's to point users that you can change some stuff about the sound settings. But I just feel like, yeah, that's kind of a bit of a weird implementation, I guess. Not terrible, I guess. All right. It's hard for me to recommend this. Like that's the thing, though. Like, as an advanced user, like, I'm disappointed I can't undervolt. As an advanced user, I'm annoyed at all the different power profiles changing on me without my permission. It feels like I can't control the laptop properly. That said, if I was just a casual user and I wasn't trying to do all these advanced things, you probably wouldn't even notice all of these problems as much, right? Like you'd be like, cool, I like the blue keyboard on the backlight. It looks good. I don't need to change that. You probably wouldn't even try to change it. Maybe you do try to change it. I don't know. Maybe that's one thing an advanced user or a basic user would be annoyed with. But like the performance profiles in games, they probably wouldn't even care that it happens. So from an advanced user perspective, you're probably going to be super frustrated with the software on this. From a casual user perspective, if I hadn't tried to do the advanced user things, I probably wouldn't even notice the problem so much. One thing I did appreciate was the max fan button. You just press the F1 key and it activates max fans. And that did seem to work consistently, but it interrupted my user interface with the Alienware Command Center, and I could no longer change my fan profiles until I deactivated the F1 key. And then even then, sometimes the max fans just wouldn't turn on, and it was super weird. The speakers on this were like a 7.5 out of 10. They don't have that much bass. They're not super clear on the mids and highs, but they are very loud. So they're very competitive in their loudness, but not in their clarity or bass. It will fill a room with sound. The sound won't be particularly amazing, but it'll make loud noises for you, and you can jam to them or watch a movie with them. And, you know, at least you can experience your audio without it being too quiet, which you can't say that's true for all the other laptops out there. Sometimes laptop speakers are just too quiet. I think the battery life on this is not going to be amazing. but it might not be too bad. It's going to be in like the 3 to 5 hour range. You got a 97 watt hour battery on this. And if you optimize the software properly, you're probably looking at like 3 to 5 hours of web browsing with lower brightness levels. You could potentially push this further beyond, especially if you have the i7 processor instead of the i9. You can probably push the battery life up to like 6 or 7 hours of super lightweight office usage, like just typing in a Word document or using Microsoft Excel. But for the most part, you're going to look in the 3 to 5 hour range, like just like all the other gaming laptops this year. None of them are particularly great, except potentially the lower core count Intel chips or the lower core count AMD chips, especially the new Phoenix line with 8 cores and 4 nanometer finish process. Those battery life should be much better on those laptops. Probably doing more like 6 to 8 hours of web browsing is what I'm anticipating on those. And even more, obviously, if you're just doing office tasks, all depending on how you optimize them. But we got to do some actual battery life testing. And I want to do a battery life battle royale live stream where I'm doing like, we're just going to set all the laptops up. And we're going to have like 16, 20 laptops all going at once with a battery life test. And we'll see which laptops die the soonest. And it'll be like a fun, chill live stream. We can just chat about laptops while we're doing the battery life tests. The RGB, let's talk about the RGB real quick, because that's one reason to buy an Alienware. We do have a Tron light on the back. You can change the top color and the bottom color to rotate in an rainbow faction. You also have the Alienware logo here. This can also change colors, and you can customize this in the software. That did work fine for us. I do miss the higher quality RGB light with multi-zone, so you could change it in like a ring, and you could really see a multiple, like a rainbow color across the whole light constantly. On the old Alienware 17X or X17 from a couple of years ago that I reviewed, the Tron light was just better quality on that one. In the end, can I recommend this laptop? Kinda. The performance was good in games. CPU performance was mediocre in multi-core performance. The software was just so buggy. It was so annoying. That's the part that makes me go, I can't recommend it to advanced users. Casual users probably won't notice how bad the software is, probably until they start trying to do advanced stuff. So that's the weird part. And then obviously if you turn on max fans, you may end up with accidentally having the max fans being constantly on, and you couldn't turn them off in certain circumstances and situations, which would drive me crazy as a user. Yeah, and the display, that's the other thing that is, for such an expensive laptop, the display is really substandard. I gotta mention probably the number one reason that users will choose the Alienware M7 or M18. The top reason to pick this laptop over the competition this year is probably the 480 hertz refresh rate display. If you're an esports gamer, that is probably the best display you can buy for a gaming laptop and play esports on. Okay, so 480 hertz refresh rate for gamers that like play Valorant or CSGO, you could get probably close to 480 hertz on the refresh rate in those games, or at least 300 plus into the 300s, 400s range, often and frequently. You have to be like a dedicated gamer for that specific type of game for that display to make sense buying over the competition. Otherwise, for most esports gamers, I would say it's better to go QHD 240 hertz on something like the Blade 18 or the Scar 16 or the Scar 18. Those displays are going to be better than what you're going to get on this laptop, and smoother gameplay with a 240 hertz refresh rate, all of that. And it's a better all-around gaming experience. I think it's the best blend right now. A QHD 240 hertz display is the best blend of image quality, ability to render the image, and excellent gameplay smoothness, because the graphics cards this year can definitely push 240 frames per second in a lot of titles, especially if you optimize the settings to be like high-ish, medium-ish, and then you can obviously modify DLSS down as well to like balance mode. Like in Hogwarts, I can push 150 to 250 FPS just by changing a couple different settings and like turning off ray tracing and then setting DLSS to balance mode, and then boom, I'm like pushing 200 FPS on my Blade 18. And it's an incredibly smooth gaming experience. That's why I think the 240 hertz QHD display is the perfect display range to shoot for this year. And it's really sad that Alienware M18 only has a QHD 165 hertz display option. And I really hope Alienware adds a higher brightness and color gamut, a QHD 240 hertz display option for the M18 to make it more competitive on a display level versus the competition. In a summary, good game performance, buggy software, disappointing display, phenomenal build quality, great keyboard, great ports, Windows Hello worked well, webcam decent. If you're willing to deal with buggy software, you can buy it, but in general, I'll recommend other laptops over this one. In general, this is not a top recommendation from me. That's it for this live stream. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you guys. Peace.